Well, seeing as though Sonic Universe 45 is a standalone story and issue, remember what I said about the 30 out of 30 being a perfect score? And if it had an added backstory, 60 out of 60 being that? Well, the previous two-parter you listened to basically kind of confirms that these two issues, 42 of the main comic and 45 of Universe, were not very favorable in Dan Drazens' eyes. I'm not going to read off basically what he says much here. But basically, this is what he says for Racing for the Stars. I'm not going to read much. He basically talks about this being the second annual Sega All-Star Racing Grand Prix. And he talks about this Ari of Super Monkey Ball, whose car is inspired by a bunch of bananas. He represents the maturity. Basically, this is what he says. I'm just going to read the head score because apparently he was not too happy about this. But this is what he says about the head of the story. He says, for the head portion of the story, he says, I hate game flogs like this. From a narrative standpoint, nothing has been brought to the party. As I've said before, a story like this runs in the comic not because there's a story that needs telling, but because there's a game that needs selling. This is for all the trappings of something legitimate. Just another souped up car. Okay. This is for all the trappings of something legitimate, just another souped up karting game. I'm sorry, but there's no way to take Ari's clown car with anything like seriousness. Then again, we have a driver in this race whose previous racing experience consisted of inline skating. Sonic Adventure 2 featured a fair amount of grinding, and Sonic and Shadow didn't even have to wear inline skates. As with most weaponized racing games, even this crappy little exercise is exempt from obeying Newton's third law of motion. I'm thinking of Eggman firing all those missiles and don't even think about how they're supposed to be targeted. My guess is Ian didn't think about it either. Neither did Sega, if that's part of the game. The scene of Vice batting them away with his swords thrumps the rockets themselves in ridiculousness. I'm sorry, but I was totally spoiled by an episode of Mythbusters where they explain how a rocket-propelled grenade actually works. They penetrate their target by exuding molten copper, before the explosive charge itself goes off. But Memorak, like Hollywood and Washington, D.C., thinks it can safely just ignore inconvenient realities. Beat tagging Eggman's car is just as improbable, and don't even get me started on Tails slapping Eggman's car with his tails. And of course, the ending here is foreordinary. Even if Sonic doesn't win, Eggman has to lose. Too bad the story doesn't get beyond the basic race. The further along you go, you end up with great drivers such as Wreck-It Ralph, Knights, and Joe Morsha. And there's got to be a kitchen sink in there, and there's got to be a kitchen sink in there somewhere. In the past, game flogs were regulated to backstories or at 5 pages in length. Really couldn't do much damage. They were also usually written as setups for the game's story, or for the game's storyline. Prequels, if you will. This tries to tell the story of the game, which, being a karting game, has no story. Another waste of trees. Head score, 1. I think that's the lowest he's ever given one. The head portion of a story, that is. The artistic score. Props to Tracy Yardlin for doing a decent job with Danica Patrick. Everything else, I suppose if you actually care about this grab bag of a story, you can form your own opinion. I score 8. Heart score, and this is what he says about it. Heart? You kidding? You're kidding, right? Heart score, not available. So technically it's a 9 out of 30. Way beyond lower than the other one. Basically a definite F minus. And again, he joins the ranks of people that are pissed about the fact that basically Sega, no offense to them, I know they're just doing their job, obviously, but that that Sega just has to up and come and interrupt everything by saying, we want this in an issue. Oh, but we're doing this. Oh, we want this. I mean, come on, think about it. Whether you like Ian Flynn or not, and whether you feel he's losing his touch or not, think about it this way. He's sitting down, he's getting that phone call, and it's like, oh, by the way, we got the call from Sega to let you know that they want for issue 45 of Sonic Universe a full 20-plus page story adaptation of All-Star Racing Transformed. Now put yourself in Ian Flynn's shoes. Ian Flynn's going like, probably thinking, are you serious? Are you kidding me? All-Star Racing Sega All-Stars Transformed? Are you serious? There's no real story. It's just a racing game. How can I fill up a whole thing like that? Fans are mostly used to it being like a backstory. And if you think that's some, just imagine when he gets a phone call from Archie saying, oh, by the way, Sega wants us to do an adaptation of the crossover game with Mario. But they don't want but we can't have Mario. They just want some kind of a somewhat of adaptation of the Olympic Games and also a bit of a tie-in to the Olympics as well. Oh, and by the way, it's scheduled for a December release. And think about it this way. And then again, you got to think of what Ian Flynn's probably thinking. He's probably thinking, excuse me? They want me to interrupt the current story arc I'm doing right now to do that as the main story? Are you serious? They want me to dump everything just for that story? And the fact that it's not even going to feature Mario, the person that Sonic crosses over with in the game? Are you serious? And think about it. Think about it this way. Put yourself in Ian Flynn. Like I said, whether you like the guy or not, whether you feel the guy's losing his touch or not, think about it. Here's a guy that's basically being told, oh, by the way, you're going to do these little adaptations and whatever, and you have no reason and you're thinking, well, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I got a current story arc going on right now. Why do I have to do this? To them, it doesn't make any sense. But to someone like Ian, it probably doesn't make any sense. But again, he has to do his job. And believe it or not, whether you want to believe this or not, Ian himself has shown frustration through many texts, through many journals on DeviantArt, his websites, wherever. I'm sure you've all read some frustration coming from him. Because believe me, he's doing this job. He's staying with this job to provide a life for his family, which is good. But don't think for one instant that he doesn't come home to his family, or when he's around his family, and he doesn't probably tell them, and he probably does, and I mean, it's just my opinion, but don't think for one instant Ian's like anybody else that has a job, that when they have time off, that they have a day off, so they hang around family, like let's say Easter's coming up, right? Resurrection Sunday, if you will, this Sunday. You know, don't think for one second Ian won't be around his family and they're going to be like, well, how's the stories going, Ian? Don't think for one instant Ian's going to be like, oh, man, I had all this great stuff planned and everything, and now it's all being shoved to, you know, I have to do this and that. It's making me mad. I don't know what to do. Okay, maybe not like that, but just just put yourself in his shoes and having to tell your family and friends when you see them on your days off how things really are going at work. But again, this is just an example that it's not entirely Ian's fault. This is where you can't really blame him. It's mostly the people that are licensing that have given the license to Archie Comics to do comic book adaptations of their mascot and the characters associated. I mean, there are many fans that are basically saying, hey, look, if this crap's going to keep going, and now with what's going on with this damn lawsuit behind the scenes, why don't you just reboot the damn thing? But they can't do it because it's one of the most best-selling comics they got. They can't do that. They can't do that, and I don't think they want to go through something similar to what Marvel and DC have gone through. But we'll just have to wait and see. But apparently Dan Drazens not too happy with these last two issues back in December. So hopefully things will perk up for him when he gets to reviewing and typing up his reviews for the Endangered Species and the Chaotic Sagas. So comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. And if this is in multiple parts, I apologize. Comment down below. Peace out. God bless.